Welcome to our session. We are live also on YouTube, but here in our Zoom meeting, we can interact about our session. We are about to start. Everyone's arriving here. I'm gonna have some a housekeeping moment here to explain a little bit about our session, and then we can start. Let me share with you again our presentation. So yeah, as part of the World Futures Day, we are having 7 sessions together with Envisioning today online. And then it's a pleasure to be doing this partnership with Envisioning. Probably you know Envisioning already, but if not, Envisioning is the world's first collaborative intelligence platform for emerging technologies. And just like Envisioning is mapping different technologies, processes, methods about how we can build our future. Today we are going to talk about how we can map these different concepts, knowledges, methods to understand our relationship with time. Just to know, after this session, we're going to have another session with Luma, connecting dots about tech and culture, so you are well invited to be part also of this session. And I think we can start. So welcome travelers to our open session today. During this session today, we are going to be talking about our relationship with time. And to that, I would like to present to you Torus. Torus is a time lab, and then we study how people question and understand their relationship with time. On Torus Time Lab, we study and develop innovation projects in temporal technology. So we study how people understand and address the questions around time and around the understanding of time. And to start here is a good starter point to talk about how Aristotle defined time. This is something that people always ask in our sessions. So how we can talk about, how we can have a definition about time to start. And then time is the measure of change, is how we recognize what is changing around, what is in transformation in the context around us. So today we're gonna talk about change, about time, and how we can understand this relationship with time. And what is a time lab? This is another question, really good to start our session. Well, it's our experimental space to question and to learn about people's relationship with time. How we can gather information about how people understand and connect with time individually and collectively as a society and as a planet. And here I have some of the different workshops and events and experiments around different countries talking about our relationship with time. And then I think another question that is a good starter point for us is, well, we are in the World Futures Day, but why time matters? Why is important to talk about time? Well, it's important as well as a beginning here to say that we are living a time crisis. We are feeling pressured by time, and it is important to us to understand how we can build better connections and better relationships with our time and our lifetime. So before start here after this first questions, I would like to invite you all that now I think we have a quorum here to start to share in our comments in which city, where in the world are you at the moment. So I am Gustavo, but you can call me Gust. I am the creator of Toros, and I am Brazilian, but I am now in Amsterdam. I am living in Amsterdam since 2017. And most of these projects still happen, they are still happening between Brazil and here in Europe. And I'm curious to know where you are. So we have some friends from South Africa, from Portugal, people in Brazil, in Recife in Brazil, in France, in Ireland, in Seattle, in Berlin, in Greece, in Scotland. I think we have a really interesting group to be able to talk about different perspectives of time, to understand how our different cultures here in this group connect with the idea of time. So I have people in Germany, in New York, in Dominican Republic. Really nice to have you all here together. And I'm really curious to know also about your relationship with time and how we can exchange learnings and ideas here about time. Also people in Rio. So welcome to all of you travelers that are here with us today. How this session is gonna work. After the UNESCO Future Literacy event that we had a huge workshop talking about many different perspectives of time, also together with Envisioning, we decided to do this session as an open session that we decided to bring to you some context, some information about how we can talk about this topic about our relationship with time. But then on top of that, I would like to invite you also to share about your relationship and how you think these ideas that we are bringing here can be used in your context, and how this can be important also in a planetary level. So I'm gonna start sharing some ideas. I am also, you are invited to share your comments or your thoughts or questions during during this first part in the chat. If you wanna stop me also and open your mic and ask something, that's okay as well. During this part, if you want to keep your camera closed, that's okay. I'm gonna just invite you to open your camera and come to our conversation. After this part, in the moment we are going to be all talking together. I think just like we have different perspectives of time, is going to be good to see all these different identities and cultures showing your faces here as well. So I'm going to share again my screen here. And I'm going to stop our soundtrack and come back to our presentation. All right, yes, done. So can you comment, can someone comment please here in our chat if you can see the presentation, just to see if our chat is working? Yes, works well, thank you. So to start here, yes, okay, nice. I would like to share with you this example of this story that for me is amazing. Some years ago, I discovered this city called Somaroy. It's actually a Norwegian island that they decided to abolish time. They decided to become this time-free zone. And what it means, well, since they are really, they decided to connect together inside of this island in a different way than all the time zones that you have in the world. So this picture that I showed here to you is a bridge in the entrance of the island, that everyone that goes to this island is invited to abandon their clocks and abandon the way they were connected with the time zones outside of the island to experience time in a different way there. And they actually decided to abolish time. So schools, companies, commerce can basically understand their own timeline and their own way to connect with time as a community. And this can sound as a really different example. And for me, it was really interesting to see how time shapes our culture and how our culture is also shaped by what we know about time. If we only know time as these concepts that in general comes to our mind, like past, present, future, and this future that is speeding up towards a direction, we start to feel like really out of sync with everything happening around. Actually, UNESCO also said that this year, since the context of the pandemic started last year, we are living in this context of an infodemics, not only a pandemic context. And I think this also shows us how we are out of sync. We are living immersed in this context that is so complex and so full of different layers that we feel that today we need to step up to a different relationship with the world around, but we feel that we are out of sync. What I want to say with that, you can see like different technologies, different concepts, different ideologies around, but then when we go to practice and we see how we are putting that in context, we feel that we are basically living stuck in a different moment of time, that these ideas are not coming to the stage, and that we should address these questions in a different way. You are not the only one thinking about that. Actually, this relationship with time became something important in many revolutions before the digital revolution or the technological revolution we are living in facing today. This sentence here, this quote, is from Manfred Lewis. He is an American sociologist that tells that during the first industrial revolution, it was the clock and not the steam machines, the gear that defined the modern industrial era. Because we started to change our relationship with time from a natural relationship with time, from the natural cycles, to understand the time of our bodies, the time of the cycles around us, to this mechanical time, since we started to connect with the time of the work, the time of the society that started to be built around the industries and around the commerce and around these new perspectives, more aligned with the time of a machine than with the time of the nature or the time of the organic, this organic perspective. So it's really interesting to think how time also, and the clock in this sense, the mechanical clock, started to shape our relationship in the modern industrial era. This graphic that I want to show you here is from Hartmut Rosa in his book about social acceleration, the social acceleration that we are living today, that tells that this technological acceleration that we are living, that is the first spot here, also causes this acceleration of the social change, because all the social environment around us start to change as well. But this also changes our pace of life as individuals. And because of that, we start to feel really stressed and anxious with all the acceleration around. But maybe this is not the only way to relate with what is happening around, because this is a cycle that continues on and on. And we are living not only this acceleration, this technological acceleration, but we are feeling also pressured by time. And I think all of us already felt this in some sense. And to question how time can be presented to us in a different way, our laboratory is called Torus Time Lab, because Torus is the best topology we have to describe how the time flow and what it means. Most of you, when you start to think about time, probably you think about this arrow that we call the arrow of time, or this line towards one direction that we basically see present, past, and future. But there are other ways to think about time and to express our relationship with time. We're going to talk about that today as well. But a torus is an object that has this shape, is a mathematical geometry that helps us to understand that from this this point in the center that is called present, we can connect with all this learning from our pasts and towards our futures. And it's important to us to understand that this perspective as a mirror, that from the present moment, and this present moment is always changing, or the concept of now is always changing, just like I'm saying that I am here, but my here can be different than yours. We are here now, and this now is also changing. From this point that we call now, now we can access these different pasts and futures. When we start to observe time in this bigger perspective, we start to have some new ideas about how we can build this relationship in a different way. And why this is important in this social political context. Probably you already heard this German term called Zeitgeist. Zeitgeist is a term that expresses the spirit of our time, this collective spirit of ideas and beliefs that define as a particular period of or moment of our history. But every time we heard about Zeitgeist, and that's okay if it's the first time you are hearing about it, but Zeitgeist is a term that most of the people use to talk only about future. So people say, my company is in sync or aligned or going towards the Zeitgeist, almost as something that talks about, I am connected with the trends, with the emergent ideas. But Zeitgeist is not only this, it's not only to look about the future. When we talk about the spirit of our time, or the spirit of a time specifically, we are talking about a lot of different ideas. We have the residual time, that are these codes, languages, behaviors that are already misaligned, but they are part of the society today. What we can bring as an example of a residual time. We can say that, for example, if here in our conversation, we start to bring some ideas that sounds misogynist or racist or transphobic, as soon as this idea appear in our conversation, you're gonna say already, oh my God, this person is bringing something that doesn't belong to this moment of the world anymore. This person has these ideas that are already outdated. This residual time that we know that they are still around us is important to us to don't ignore the existence, because we need to understand how we can approach that, address that, and solve that while they still exist around. We have also the dominant time that I represented here as this box or square that is basically the dominant time, everything that is inside of this box, the cultural codes that basically define the reality around us. And in the dominant time, in general, we don't question everything that is happening or everything that is presented to us, because it's the dominant. It's basically the status quo. The ideas that, since they are there, or they were there already when we arrived here, we never questioned. And then the third one is the emergent time, the evidence of these new narratives that are shaping new cultural codes. These ideas that we are seeing pointing to a direction, but not necessarily they manifested themselves completely already. They are ideas that are orienting us to a direction, but we know that it's not everyone that has access to these ideas yet. Why is it important to think about these three different perspectives when we are talking about Zeitgeist? Basically because the spirit of our time, or the Zeitgeist, is shaped by these different perspectives interacting. Probably you're gonna be presenting a project or talking in a class, or even having an interaction with someone from your family, that you're gonna perceive that the ideas you have about future or about the time we are living are not the same ideas that these people are sharing at that moment. Maybe you know a technology that for you is already spreaded around, and this is the first time for that community or that country or that environment that is that are listening, that group is listening about that. And it's important to us to understand that we need to have empathy to understand how we can bring these new ideas to this context that are more in the dominant or residual time. But it's really easy here to bring, for example, examples of emergent time or behaviors in the residual time, as I mentioned. The hardest part for all of us is how we can question the dominant time. Because since it's the status quo, we never question. So we not even think about that, how absurd some of the ideas presented today they are. And most of the ideas that are in this residual time, they actually were dominant in some moment. And then we started to understand how absurd they were and they are. And then for the same instance, it's important to us to question the dominant time to understand what else needs to be changed, what else we need to question and evolve in different ways. And also because of this perspective, it's important to us to understand that beyond the residual time, we have also the concept of ancestrality, or this ancestral time. There are basically the roots of this time that brought us to here, and not necessarily are things that became residue, that became something that we want to abandon. If we think about our roots, just like the roots of a tree, is what feeds us. And since we are being fed by these roots, it's important to remember that and to keep not only the memory, but to understand how we can nurture new branches of this ancestrality. So when we have this big perspective, this bigger perspective about Zeitgeist, we started already to change here in our group to think about only future, or only about Zeitgeist as something future oriented. The orientation of the direction we are moving, it has this concept of future, but we need to understand everything that comes together inside of this context. And because of that, the main concept that we study on Torus Time Lab is the concept of time together with temporality. What is temporality? If time is this idea of change and learn about what is changing, temporality is this way of how we understand and experience the time of our lives. So your temporality is the time of your life. How you understand your temporality, how you understand your time here. You understand your time as a cycle of years that you were in school, a cycle of years that you were started to go to work, and a cycle of years that you are not working anymore. And basically, this is your relationship with time. Some people have this line that I just suggested here as their temporality, but it's really interesting to study how different cultures approaches this question of the temporality, what we are doing here, how we can connect with our time on Earth, what is important and what matters to me individually and as a society. Probably these are questions that if you work in the future with future scenarios, you had asked already for a company, for a project. But what are the answers for these questions when you ask about your own temporality, your own relationship with time, and how you bring this relationship with time to your project, to your work, to your environment, to your family, to your relationships? It's important to us to think how we deal and how we approach our own relationship with time, because these are the lenses we are bringing to everything around. And I believe, just like I said, that we can learn a lot about time and about temporality when we start to connect with these different perspectives. When we understand that from this this point in the center, we can connect with ideas that are already in front of us, already they are ahead of us, but also ideas that comes from this memory and cultural heritage that we have until here. It's important to see this big perspective, and also to have this long-term view, because most of us, when we think about zeitgeist, we have what? The decade, the century, the millennia, but we have more history than that. Actually, I have here by my side a calendar from Kurzgesagt. They are a YouTube channel, Kurzgesagt. They are a YouTube channel from Germany. That they started a project of a calendar that considers the 10,000 years of history that we basically don't count when we are talking and when we are saying that we are today in the 2021. And we know that we have at least this 10,000 years of history of civilization, of human civilization before that. And we have even more when we are not counting only the Western civilizations. But why we are not considering the knowledge, the wisdom, the learning that we can have when we have this big perspective in this long-term view. We have projects, for example, like the Long Now Foundation, that are trying to bring this awareness not only to the 10,000 years that we lived already as a planet, but also to the next 10,000 years. So they are building this clock that is almost a temple, that they created an algorithm that every year this clock is going to sound only once a year, and during the next 10,000 years this clock is going to be sounding, having these different sounds every year, generated, as I mentioned, by this algorithm, doing to every and each sound being something completely different. So just like these examples, like that, you already started to make our perspective and our understand of time being something bigger. I'm gonna bring more examples here. Here's an image from one art piece, Now's the Time, from Jean-Michel Basquiat. He's an American artist, and I really like this idea that he brought in his work, that since art is how we decorate space, music is how we decorate time. For me, it's really interesting to think that we are these spatial entities that are paying attention in everything happening around the physical context around us, but how we can understand better also the time around us. And this is a really good suggestion, actually, to think about how we can decorate our experience in time, just like we decorate our relationship with space. In our lab, we are creating projects that perceive this connection, and that brings these potential connections between art, science, philosophy, how we can connect these different ideas. Because most of us, when we are studying or looking to the future, we are thinking only about one of these perspectives. And it's interesting to try to think about not only the future when we are talking about time, but about all these different perspectives of time. And then, since we are today in the World Futures Day, I brought also this article that I think is a really interesting way to talk about the subjects together. I remember to be questioned a lot about that. So, are you a futurist? This is what you study. You are studying the future. And I found out this article on Outline called "Tech Bros Who Identify as Futurists Are Sadly Incorrect." And then this was an impact for me when I read for the first time. And then when I read this article, they brought the following options or ideas to this answer. Because even when we think about a futurist, this is a title or a profession or a skill that has many different interpretations. We can say that, yes, a futurist is someone from the early 20th century, part of the Italian punk movement, the artistic movement, but also with everything that came together, not only artistically, but the fascism and the other perspectives that came out together with this artistic movement. We have also the perspective of the futurologists that that studies the future as an academic, with an academic approach. And also, we have also people that are interested in future and most connected with only the perspective of technology, that are around the subject of future based in the perspective of technology. But it's really interesting to think about how this perspective has started to change in the last 5 or 6 years. These articles that I read after the first article I mentioned, started to show us what needed to change inside of our community. The first one say about top futurists make some pretty surprising predictions about what the next decade will bring. And then we see today that we are talking about, we are living this context, right? In the context of the pandemics, things that we didn't hear at the time. Or wiring more women futurists, or futurists that rarely imagining a tomorrow without capitalism. We see the amount of things that we need to evolve and qualify in our discussions about future. And I really believe that a really good way to do that is to qualify also our language and understanding about time. Because when we are talking about future, we forget to ask to ourselves, future to whom? We have a huge inequality in this context of future, and to think about future. So it's important to us to add this whom when we are thinking about future scenarios, and to understand that maybe the most advanced technology that we are thinking at the moment is not the technology that is going to be accessible to most of the people around the world. And then because of that, this is from another article that influenced me a lot in 2015, in the beginning of these studies, saying that the futurism has this cultural blind spot, because we were able to invent the smartphones, the electric autonomous cars, but we were not able to predict. We were able to predict this kind of technologies, but we were not able to predict, for example, the women voting or anything connected with cultural change. Also, we are always thinking about a new technology or a new layer of technology in the same cultural environment, in a really similar cultural environment. This image here, for example, shows the technology changing around decades or around time, but basically the structure of the family, or the figures that represents who is working, who is having a free time at home, how these contexts are the same. Basically, we only change the technology or the gadgets we are using. And this is important to us to think about also the cultural context inside of that, because if we are basically, well, just changing the technology but keeping the same cultural perspective, we are doing just the maintenance of the status quo. And this is not futurism, this is just the techno-capitalism happening around. And for that, it's really important to all of us have this perspective of how we are impacting culture inside of these changes we are thinking in our time. And how we do that? Well, a really good way to start is to look how we were thinking about future in our history, what changed and what didn't work, to have the examples of the failures of our history as well. Because when we are moving, ignoring our past, just looking to the future, we are basically we're gonna basically face again the same mistakes, because we don't have memory. Memory is what help us to don't repeat the same mistakes. And we are seeing in many different contexts how these different errors and failures are coming back in cycles again and again when we are not remember them. So because of that, I know it sounds that we are in something like a futurism hangover, but actually this is a really good opportunity to all of us to be able to build the next step of what we understand as future and what we understand as our relationship with future as individuals and as specialists studying the subject as well. When I started to research and work in projects about our relationship with time, I understood the importance of bringing this critical thinking I mentioned to you, applied to all futures that until the moment were limited by this technological or technical bias. How is important to us to think about also all these other lenses that I am bringing here to you today, to be able in some way to correct or to find some lenses to help us to deal with our myopia about time, because today basically these lenses are facing only one direction. Because of that, we understand the importance to have this temporal literacy, not only a future literacy, but also to understand this perspective about what are the words you use to talk about time. We are limited today with something that is so important in basically 2 to 3 words as past, present, and future. But we need new languages. We need new cultural codes that I understand that are also going to be translated in new behaviors, new collective agreements that are going to help us to understand the society and our place in the society in different ways. Almost like this movie that I don't know if you remember, Arrival. The Arrival is a movie with Amy Adams, that she's a character that is a linguist, and it's really interesting that in the middle of this military group, she's the only one that can help to translate these codes to bring a new understanding of past, present, and future. And as she started to understand the language, she started also to perceive the reality around the language in a different way. And I really believe that our reality is based in our language. If you don't have the knowledge, the words for that, is really hard to understand that this is happening around. And in our comments, Peter mentioned that the ancient Latin, for example, had a more nuanced view of time. And this is amazing to think about. For example, I am Brazilian, and I know how the words in Portuguese express time. But then it's really interesting to go exploring these different languages around the world and see these different meanings, these different layers of meanings in which word. For example, in Portuguese, we have the same word for time, for tempo, like the musical pace, and for weather. So we can be talking about climate, we can be talking about music, or we can be talking about past, present, and future. We have the same word, which is tempo. It's the same word for time in all these different contexts. And Benjamin mentioned here in our chat that same in French. And it's really interesting because when we start to go studying the different languages that comes from different roots, they have like different ideas that like the ones we are bringing now. But today we don't think about that like that much. How we have this inadequacy of grammar. We don't have like a vocabulary that helps us to express more ideas about time. For example, still about codes and language. Some people, when we are talking about past and future in a synesthetic way or in a spatialized way, you can say that time is passing in a timeline, in a direction, just like you walking in a direction. So you can say that time is passing from here to the next step. So past is here, and now I am going towards the future. So the arrow of time is going in that direction. And also some other cultures, they understand the opposite, that the time is moving towards one direction against us. And because of that, since we are moving towards, for example, today is Monday, we are moving towards Wednesday. So the time is coming from Wednesday to Monday in our direction to face us in the opposite direction. So these are, for example, a cultural example of a different relationship with time. We have also the different codes, for example, in some small communities that people say, for example, I am here talking and gesticulating a lot about time, and I can say that some ideas from the past, and then I can point from, for example, my left, or how we can move towards future and point to the right. Probably you do the same, right? We have these directions of to point in left or right. That is the same direction we write, for example. And we say that we are coming from past to the future. And we created this concept. But this is not the same in every culture. Just like the left and right, or the example I brought in the beginning, is interesting how some cultures say that the future is in front of us. So I can say that I can see the future in front of us. And to refer about past, we're going to say, like, I'm going to do a movement with my hands like this. Yesterday happened, or last year. And then we're going to do this movement, almost something that is behind already because it passed already, is in the past. But this is not also not universal code. For some cultures, for example, the future is in our backs because it's the part of time that we cannot see. And the past is in front of us because it's what we can see, because we just came from that. So we are walking towards the future without being able to see that new time. And we are able to see only the time that is in front of us because it's the time we lived already. So these are basically really subjective perspectives of how we deal with time. But it's really interesting to start to think about how is your relationship with this codes around time. And also here in the comment, Peter mentioned that and not too quickly to get everything done that we want to before Wednesday. Exactly. We have also these codes that when it's a Monday, we have this feeling of a Monday that is, oh my God, I have a lot to do, and I start to feel pressured. We have the quality of this time, right? Of this word. Monday is not only a word just like Friday. When we talk about Friday, we have another, like a different type of quality to talk about Friday. But today we lost a little bit this concept in the middle of the pandemic, since we are in our houses. But it's really interesting to keep this idea of maybe time, in our words about time, in our concepts about time, they can be not only a number or a direction, but they can carry this quality, this idea together. Because this is also something that helps us to develop this long-term view, this idea that I am not only basically moving towards one direction, doing the same thing. I'm not a number. I'm not a machine. I'm not this machine walking towards one direction again and again. This is an idea that we have because of the Industrial Revolution, as I mentioned. How we can bring back some ideas, for example, of a more natural relationship with time. Because of everything that we are talking here today, it's really important to us to understand that just like when the moment we are building a strategy or writing about a concept or explaining something to someone that is important to us, that we try to translate the how we can achieve that, is important to us to think also about the when to. There is a best moment of the week, of the day, of the month, of the year, to do what we want to do. Just like we have today as a celebratory day in the calendar to remember, to help us to remember, to bring back to memory this idea that today is the World Futures Day. This is a when to information. Is a way to us to understand there is a moment to that happen. There is actually a really nice book from Daniel Pink. He's an American author that he says exactly this. He studied the scientific approach about the when to, the science of timing, to understand that we have the best moment or the proper moment to some activities as well. And he brings a lot of really nice examples in this book, just like the fact that if your goals going to the gym varies from lose weight to gain muscles, the moment of the day you are going to the gym actually can contribute or can go against your goal at that moment. And if you want to have, this is really easy actually, this one. If you want to ask for a raising in your salary and you decide to knock the door of your boss Friday afternoon after a long and intense week of work, to talk about everything that you achieved that week and about the possibility of raising your salary, probably you're going to have a no, or let's talk about that in another moment. This is not a good moment, because no one wants to discuss anything new in the end of a week in a Friday afternoon. So actually, if you want to bring something that needs to be to take some decision and is important to you, try to bring in the beginning of the week, in the weekly meeting, that this strategic perspective is being decided. And something that is really simple, but actually really useful to all of us, is something that Daniel Pink calls Nappuccino strategy. Is that moment that you feel really tired to do what you are doing at the moment, but you need to continue. And then he suggests to prepare your coffee and put an alarm of 15 minutes in your phone, drink that coffee and go to take a nap. But then don't worry, because the coffee, when the coffee hits you, is gonna make you get up, and then you're gonna have more energy. You were able to rest a little bit, and you are gonna have more energy to continue your task. And he calls this approach of a nappuccino, and he brings a lot of ideas like that in this book that I mentioned. But just like the when to that I brought here, it's important to us to understand that people have different time orientations, that my relationship with time and everything that I mentioned here that are really subjective or cultural, they are different in different places or in different cultures. So we can say that also individually, these orientations are different. Maybe you are a person more future oriented. Maybe you are a person more like past driven, or maybe you are more in a celebratory mood to be present in the moment and to flow in what is going to appear to your life today. And that's okay, but maybe you are not only one of these. Maybe we are changing in these different time orientations. Actually, I placed here in this chart for you a map created by Felipe Zimbardo. He's an American psychologist that mapped in a book called The Time Paradox, the 6 approaches of time orientations, to say that we can be more oriented towards past in a positive way, with seeing our past with gratitude, or feeling guilt by the past and repeating this cycle. Doesn't matter what is happening at the moment. If you arrived here 2 minutes late, for example, instead of being the present, you can say that, oh no, I am late because this always happened with me. I am a person that things that happen and I continue this behavior, and then you start to be like towards the guilt behavior. But actually, you can understand that if something happened already in your life, you can bring this as a learning that is gonna help you to evolve that behavior in the next situation. You need to remember that with gratitude. That is gonna make you don't repeat that if you don't want, or to evolve that behavior in some way. In the same instance, we have Zimbardo in Time Paradox bringing these two other times with this 4 other time orientation. People that are living only the present as a fate, as something you cannot change. So you are being basically feeling the present without being in the control. So it's the fatalistic perspective of present, or the hedonistic perspective that also understand that you don't have control, but since you don't have control, you can try to do your best, to give your best to enjoy that experience. In the 2 perspectives towards future, one is called transcendental future because it's the one we have this gap between the present today and what we want to achieve as a future. So it's the idea, for example, of I want to go to the heavens. I want to live a better life when I stop to work. I want to be able to achieve this dream in some moment. But then today I am not doing anything for that. I'm just waiting the moment. I have this gap between the past, the present, and the future. That is transcendental because you need to wait something to happen to achieve that. And the concrete future, or the future that we approach with concretude, is the one that we understand that doesn't matter what I want as a future scenario. I need to start to build these building blocks in the present to be able to achieve that. I would like to know if you identify yourself more towards past, towards present, towards future, in which of them, and to also know if more than one as well, because since time is something that is changing, we are also flowing in this different ones. So there is something happening in our life that makes us go full on to the past with guilt, and then we change again. No, now I am more placing these building blocks in the present to build my future. But it's important to understand that all of them are necessary. And the waves here, the lines that I brought that are also part of the study, they say that if you are placing building blocks to the future, but you are not grateful for your past, you are basically just repeating an activity without knowing why you are doing. You don't have this feeling of realization, of meaning, because it's the meaning that makes us understand that, okay, I want to continue to do something for my future because what I do, or what I did until now, and what I'm doing until now is bringing me gratitude. I want to do this different thing because what I was doing before and I want to change was not bringing gratitude, and I want to have this gratitude about my temporality, about my life. And then with these different perspectives, we can start to build our own map of time, or our own relationship with time. As I mentioned to you, this conversation can go from hours and days and months and weeks and years until a really big perspective of epochs or eras or eons that are a more planetary, geological, cosmic, galactical perspective of time, where we start to go to that really big numbers around time. And looking here to the comments. Peter mentioned the Gibson continuum. Yes, and then here also the Peter said, I have an optimistic future orientation and sense of agency in having an obligation to shift probabilities in favor of favorable futures. Perfect. It's a really important perspective. Is a really necessary perspective for to everything that we are living at the moment. But it's also a huge responsibility, right? It's a responsibility that makes us feel the pressure of the time. Just like Alex mentioned here that I have anxiety, so I live in the future. That we are always like, we that are placing our energy in building and bringing information about this future, we also are the ones living like this anxiety with the responsibility of that. But it's important to us to feel to find balance, to understand that we are not alone in this journey, that we have more people also connected in a network, bringing knowledge from different cultures, from different moments of history, from different communities. In every and each of these pieces are necessary to build these favorable futures. So in the moments we don't have the energy to continue to be in an optimistic perspective, for example, of the concrete scenarios, it's important to rest, understanding that this network is there to us. Actually, one of the main projects of Taurus is to build and to manage these communities around different groups in different companies or in different societies and different cultures around different countries, to understand how people are facing their relationship with time and how we can pay attention together in how we can change that. Because the knowledge that I'm bringing here is really interesting, but different to everyone that is already used to talk about future. But we are not living a crisis about knowledge. The knowledge is available. What is hard for all of us about our relationship with time is to change our habits, to change our habits of existence. This is what temporality is. It's how we change and how we understand this change that is happening not only in a global perspective, but daily, individually, with all of us. And when we start to think about that, we start to understand that it's not only about the plan of what I want to achieve in 2030, but about the small steps that I can give today, that I can do today and tomorrow, and in the day after tomorrow. And for that, it's really important to have some structure to build a new habit, to find this community that is going towards the same direction of you. This is what we do in our projects in Taurus. I'm gonna say also to close this part of the presentation, to come up with more of the ideas you are bringing here, that for us to develop this temporal intelligence is as important as all the other intelligences we mapped until today. Just like you have to develop your emotional intelligence as a soft skill to understand how you are gonna place yourself in the world you are today, this temporal intelligence is as important as that. And also, I would like to tell you that we have different Zeitgebers. I talked about Zeitgeist, that is the spirit of time. But just like we have the industry or technology around us guiding most of this discussion, we can change what is the Zeitgeber, that is this element that makes us think about our relationship with time. Today can be the system, can be the mechanical clock, but in previous societies, the Zeitgeber that was shaping the Zeitgeist were the sun, the moon, the tides, the different cycles and patterns of the nature, the frequencies, the human body, the human consciousness. When we start to think what is in the center of our experience of with time, today is a mechanical clock. but the mechanical clock is not necessarily the time. The mechanical clock or the mechanical or the calendar that we guide ourselves to go to work or to do our projects, but we have other perspectives about time that we can that plays a really important role in this story as well. And because of that, I'm gonna come back to the presentation in the final minutes, but now I'm gonna stop here my video. I think we have material enough to also ask to all of you to come here to the video with me, to open your videos and to share some of these ideas that you are bringing here in the comments. I saw actually the last one I comment, I think was Peter. So Ashley, would you like to share with us what you brought in our comments?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I was just thinking how I'm kind of pivoting into transition design professionally. And so I've been looking at a lot of futures and stuff. And so it's it's really interesting that my day to day, I really think a lot about the future and how what we do now can impact it. But professionally or in that set, I don't really think much about the past. I think it informs it and there's a lot there, but not consciously. Whereas like in my therapy, I do this EMDR. And so we're really like, I'm putting myself in the past, and it's really interesting to think about how those inform each other. And I'm not sure I can put that into words right now, but it's just, it does remind me of that story or the movie that you mentioned earlier, and having the language around it and just kind of thinking about it more nebulously, and it just is kind of all one thing.
This is such a perfect example. I identify 100% with what you just shared, because like 10 to 5 years ago, my work was basically to put myself in the future, to study the next movements. But then I started to notice that this was not my personal approach to think about time, to think about this experience of time. And when I was thinking only about future, well, I was losing part of my reality around, because my mind was not in the present. My mind was always building this future to society, to collective, to companies. But it's really important to us to have like this perspective that considers the other layers of time. And this, we are here using only the Western terms for that, right? Past, present, and future. We have many possibilities to incorporate to that. Who else want to come to our mic and share about your relationship with time?
I volunteer. So the only thing I wanna say is like thank you first of all, in the name of Envisioning and like everyone. And the only thing I can share about this is when I started thinking about how longevity is evolving, and the science that wants to keep us alive for longer is evolving. And when you look at the people that are alive today and how old they are, like my grandma, who is 94, if I'm not mistaken, when she was born, that was not the life expectation at all. So I am pretty sure, like when I did my little research, I'm pretty sure that we're gonna live, by we, I mean like people living in like more or less developed societies with access to healthcare and in some levels at least, we're gonna live like at least 120 years. Maybe more, which made me make like different decisions in life, take time off, for example, for my son just now, and like not be so much in the rat's wheel of like a job and like career, like I have to do this before that. I'm still like that a little bit, to be honest. I feel like I have to catch up before my 40s. But like that was like doing that research, thinking about time in that manner, like visualizing my life in a big way, made me like make like very important decisions in a different way.
Amazing. Most of us, we think that, or we were taught to think that the new generations are coming with new ideas, so nice to follow that. But actually we have so much to learn with everyone that came before of us. And in this really close level, like the closest possible, like our family, our grandfathers and grandmothers, but also to understand this community perspective of who are the grandfathers and grandmothers of my city, of my community, of my culture, and what I can learn about that, and what I can learn with the ones that came before of them as well. It's amazing how, just like I mentioned, the line of time and everything around this area that we are not seeing, for me was to discover almost like new layers of reality that I was not considering because I was looking only to one direction. You wanna share here with us, Alex, in the mic, what you said in the chat?
Sure. Yeah. It was something that my sister reminded me of now that we're going into spring and the days are getting longer. And she said, well, now that we have 10 hours of daylight each day, I mean, I live in Scotland, so it's like mostly obscured by cloud cover and rain, but you know, it's the same principle. So that's the trigger for plant growth. And I just really like the idea, because I find time such a human construct. And I kind of came from corporate, you know, timesheets, having to account for my time, but it didn't mean anything. And it was like doubly abused in a corporate setting to, you know, to demonstrate to clients profitability. But it wasn't a measure of time. And I'm an ecologist by kind of formal training, I suppose. So being in tune with nature, and like I have a much more cyclical view of time, I suppose, that it kind of goes round, you know, in a day, in a year, in a season, and it just kind of keeps coming back around. So we try to force this linear approach onto time, and it's really artificial. You know, like I can kind of, the more I think about it, the more I just come back to thinking like it doesn't really mean anything, and then that can send me in a whole other loop. But I really like just looking to nature as a bit of a kind of, I suppose, as a tonic to the way that we live, and the idea that we need to account for our time and be productive. And you know, it doesn't really, I don't think it's good for our mental health to live life in that kind of structure. I think that we can take a lot from nature, and how nature, like what even is time.
Yeah, perfect. I think I also see, just like you said, that this human construct is around this mechanical time that you just mentioned, right? That when we understand that time is only that, we see ourselves basically stuck inside of a system that is not even a cycle, that we feel facing all the struggles around our relationship with time. But then we also question, like you said, like then this is life, this is reality, this is what I'm gonna live as my temporality. And it's really amazing to connect with the cycles of nature, as you said, to understand that, well, actually it has different ways to perceive and to pay attention how I am connected to that. Nice, thank you.
Gusti, I have something to share as well. Like for all the Brazilians abroad, I'm drinking Guaraná Antarctica, which actually takes me to childhood times, because like it tastes like childhood. So like when I find it, I'm able to find it here. It's completely different. The fact that Alex is in Scotland also reminded me one decision. When I moved to Scotland to do my master, I didn't have my Italian passport, so I had to pay full price as someone not from the UK. That is the equivalent of like a car or like destroying a car. So that I rationalize that like I'm like spending the same amount of money I would do if I like destroy the car, or if my father had like give me a car, or like if I bought a car because I graduated or something. So I put that into a master's. And that was how I coped with the loss of so much money. But it was not a loss, it was a great investment. And I loved being in Dundee, as I talked today with Alex. But yeah, just another, 2 cents.
Really good. Benjamin, share a little bit with us too, with your relationship.
Well, thank you first for this great presentation. It was really interesting. So I'm working for an innovation cell, like within the UN in New York. And we can talk maybe later after the presentation, like that would be great. But
Nice.
no, yeah, it's fascinating. Like, and what Alex said, it's great. Like the fact that the time is really relative, like by definition, I guess, but like we can experience it really like on a personal level, and like how,
Yes.
I know some people believe like there are like 7 years cycles. This seems like this kind of 7 years things that works, good years versus bad years and all these things. But like on a personal level, like I can experience like, and just like recently, like a friend like was texting me and like and reminding me like just what we were talking about like 1 year ago. And like I'm not going to tell you all my life, but like I lived in New York for a long time, then come back to France. And then I just like, we were talking about like this kind of list of like dreams that would happen and like this kind of thing. And I feel like this is the good thing about like gratitude when we were thinking about the states in the present and like thinking about the future, how you would like idealize it and like think that it's possible, just this, and like how you can change the future just by acting like in a positive way, probably in the present, and like really like think it's possible, just this thing. And like and then I was like just not really realizing, but then I went back to New York, was hired at the UN, and like doing all these things that I kind of like made a list of things that I would love to do that are complicated because I have a daughter in France, one daughter in New York, and I still wanted to share my life between the two continents. And like, so all this kind of thing. And she was like, well, you made it. Like, and she was like telling me this kind of list that I made that I totally forgot actually. And just 1 year after, and which can seem like a lifetime at the time. And, but actually it can go pretty fast. And I love to think that, yeah, as long as you live the present you want to live, I know you can't always like be joyful and like positive, and like sometimes the experiences of life drive you in a different and more negative states, but just believe it's possible, and it will happen probably.
Yes, amazing, Benjamin. Exactly, just like you said, when we start to have more repertoire about how our relationship with time can be in different ways, we also can make that reality around. The question is just like the examples of technology I brought in the beginning. If you don't know that the thing that way of approach the world exists, how you're gonna think about your reality in a different way? And the same about time here. I really want to show you that I brought to like an example of a different temporality in a project that we organized on Taurus. And I'm gonna share again, and then I come back to the video to ask what do you think about this idea. Okay, I'm gonna show you this perspective of different cultural perspective of time and what we can learn about that. So basically, like we were talking here together, we have the possibility, like just to think about time in the Western societies, we have already the Chronos, that is the god of the mechanical clock that we all were facing and struggling, that we mentioned here. But in the Greek culture, we also have the Kairos, that is this more subjective, more meaningful, more flowing experience of time, that moment that even the hours of the clock basically disappear. We all had already these experiences, right? To say that something happened at that moment that made it feels that was like 10 hours together, and oh my God, it was just like 1 hour, and then we were in a kairos moment. Just like we can say that beyond the human experience, we have the cosmological time, the time of like these cycles of millions of years of planets and moons and suns, or a really microscopic perspective of the quantum time, that actually the physicists say that in the quantum perspective, we don't have time at all. We don't have this direction of time moving towards future. Carlo Rovelli is an Italian physicist that wrote a book called The Order of Time, that is amazing about that, about this quantum perspective of time. He's an Italian physicist, yes, as I mentioned. But then when we start to think, here I brought only the main concepts, Greek concepts, Western concepts that came to our minds today. In the Hindu mythology, time is represented as Shiva. Shiva is a cosmic entity that is dancing over a flowing river. And this entity, can you imagine this river moving, and then there is this entity dancing over the river. And the river also, just the river and the god or goddess, Shiva has these two perspectives, are always changing. So in this change is represented by this cosmic dance, this cosmic movement, this cosmic flow. In many of these different cultures that are more ancient than ours, they have this perspective of time, this perspective that brings out the image of an animal or of a god or goddess and show the movement and change in cycles. Just like around the image of Shiva, we have this cycle or circle around to represent this flowing. So basically, these ancient cultures, they say that we are flowing in time. But as I mentioned, there is not just one Shiva or just one river. You are the dancing Shiva at the moment. I am another dancing Shiva. You are the time traveler at the moment. I am another time traveler. We are facing and interacting with people with different relationships with time. This perspective is from a different culture than ours. This comes from the North Africa perspective of time. Pay attention in the different words here, completely different to us. One of them is more to right here, is called Zaza. Zaza is what we call in the Western perspective as past, present, future, the arrow of time going to one direction. For them, this is only the microcosmic perspective of time, the period of immediate concern, as they say. And of course, we know that time is going towards future. We cannot change that. But they say that this is only the small perspective. They have this other word called Zamani, that is the macroscopic time or the deeper time. They understand that this is a perspective represented here by the blue and white arrows spinning in some sense, showing that from the present, I can connect, for example, with information from my grandmother or my ancestors, and inside of this library with them, I can bring some knowledge to apply in this period of immediate concern. But my grandmother can be literally my grandmother, but can be also a mountain, a river, ancient tree. They are also the ancestors of this, of us as people. What I like about this concept is that Zaza and Zamani, both of them, doesn't have a translation as present, past, future. They are completely different. They are words that represent ways of observe the reality that we don't have, that we, in our cultures, at least mine culture, have different perspectives, not these words. But I have this root, this ancestrality and this root also in the African continent. We have not only in Brazil, but most of us, in some moment, these nomads came from Africa. And look how amazing this perspective to think that, yes, time is moving to one direction, but I actually can go towards the other direction to bring an information from someone or some ancestor to apply here. And why they say that this is important, because while we are not looking to the learning we had already in the past, we are basically just repeating the same loop until we are able to perceive the same mistakes and change that. So to us here, for example, in an event about the future, we see the future as the most important thing. But imagine that today, if we take the same decision towards a future that caused the same destruction, for example, around the environment, and then the next generation does do the same, basically we're going to be, yes, thinking about the future, but stuck in the same loop. And they bring this idea that how important is to have this balance. The image, as you can see, is a torus as well. I brought to you in an image in the screen, but I'm gonna just show you here in our video again without the presentation, and then I come back to tell you more about that. This is a torus. We can see, if I show you like this close to the screen, you can see like in 2 dimensions, you can say that basically I have a lot of lines and these are timelines going from one direction to the other. But we know that this is not a line. I'm looking like a line at the moment, but we know that this is a circle. For in the perspective of torus, time is just like this circle or amount of circles with multiple timelines, multiple possibilities connected in cycles that repeats and repeats and repeats. But just like the image I show you, this is only when we are looking not only in a line or in a 2-dimensional perspective. When I place the torus here in my hand and I show you like this, we can start to understand how we have these multiple timelines coming from past that connects with and lead us to multiple futures we can live, yes. But these futures, they are going to change something in our mind, in our environment, that are going to help us to resignify, to bring new meaning to one of these pasts. And this new meaning are going to help us to take a decision, to take a new path to another future. And we are, during the whole experience of life, going from past to future, from future to past. And the bridge or the portal to all of that is this place in the center. There is the present. To have this idea or this metaphor, is a metaphor to time, help us to approach, to deal with our feelings, with our experiences, with our memories in completely different ways. And I really believe that this idea of time is really better than to think just time as a line, as we were talking in the beginning. And just like the torus I brought to you about the cycles, is really interesting to see how this is present in most of the ancient cultures, from Egyptians to Aztecs and Mayans. And basically this spiral that we are seeing, this idea of this torus form, is basically a representation of what is happening in this cosmical perspective of our galaxy. The galaxy is the spiral, but then we are living in a really small version of that. I decided to bring to you these different cultural perspectives here because their reality is shaped by these lenses that I am bringing here. And because of that, they took completely different decisions. The Egyptians, the Mayan, the Aztecs, they connected with the reality around in different ways. I created this project called Token Quest that we started to study in a community, in a group of people that started in December last year. I was studying this perspective of the Mayan culture and the Mayan time for more time than that, and then but I was doing basically with my group, my team, and sharing this in a more closer circle. And then I decided, okay, let's open to this community of people connected with our studies to who wants to every day know not only the day of the year or the month that we know already, but to understand what is the quality. Remember that I mentioned in the beginning, the quality of Monday, the quality of, they had in the token that was the Mayan calendar, qualities for each day, represented by symbols and archetypes. But it's really interesting how they bring tools to self-investigation, to make us think about our days, our lives. And then the token actually is like this. I brought this image here is to show the waves or the cycles that I mentioned, but the token is this thing that looks more like a periodic table than a calendar. It's something that has this 26-day cycle. That is the combination by some qualities or archetypes with this framework of how or when or how we put this in practice. If you can, I'm gonna share this material with you, so you're gonna be able to explore more. And if you would like to be part of our
Hi, everyone. I think Gusti, is Gusti still there?
I think we lost him.
Yeah, looks like Gusti is having some issues. I think officially we needed to close right now, actually, but Gusti is here on mute. Maybe something is going on. Is everything okay, Gusti?
Yes, it is. It was. Alex said here it was too much for the internet. Exactly.
Could be.
Exactly. But I'm gonna just share the last ones for you. It's interesting that they had this fractal quality of time. What it means that if you pay attention, if you want to change the next 13 years or the next decade, you need to pay attention in what you are doing in 13 days. You need to pay attention in how you are if we are not able to change an habit in a small scale, how come we believe that we're going to be able to change that habit in a larger scale? So because of that, they understood like in these cycles that they represent always like a fractal of a bigger one. So they had these 13 days that are called time waves, or 13 vines that are cycle of 20 days, that is the cycle of Tzolk'in. Actually, Tzolk'in is 13 cycles of 20 days. And that's why they had this cycle of 260 days. That, by curiosity, is the same cycle of the 9-month cycle to prepare a baby. The pregnancy cycle is the 9 months. And they had this as a calendar. It's really interesting to think about this different cycles, and they really used that from days to this cycle that they called long counting. That was what probably you heard about the Mayan. That was, oh my God, 2012 is ending the calendar of the cycle of the Mayan calendar. But if we are talking about something that is cyclical, we are understanding that the end of one cycle is also the beginning of another one. Why I'm bringing this as an example? Because this here is a framework, just like a business canvas, is a canvas, a temporal canvas that you can use together with that information to self-investigation about how the Mayan used to use this calendar to understand what are the challenges I am facing at the moment? What is my purpose? How I can serve better in a planetary scale to the challenges we are going through as a society. And in these 13 tones or 13 positions, they have like the possibilities to different qualities. I'm gonna show you an example, really, I know it's a lot, it's different, but I'm gonna show you just one example here that is, for example, today, we are living as one of these cycles inside of the Mayan calendar that has these names or these images here. Actually, today we are exactly the day of we are in the crystal earth sign, or the day of universalize what we know and collaborate with others in order to help the earth. It's a really beautiful poetical way to think about time, because they have this idea of, okay, I have a number, but beyond the number, what I want to focus today in my day? And we have these collective archetypes to think about that. Just like these ideas I brought here to you, like I mentioned, right? We are in the crystal earth. And they have this idea of all these symbols, they have a meaning of something that today the physics is still learning how to approach. For example, they had this concept of the starry deer crocodile. For them, the galaxy was a crocodile, and for us can be different, but actually they were seeing the crocodile in the same image we are seeing here in the galaxy. We need to be used with the Mayan art, like it's a different a different type of style, but this image I put here is basically the same image of the galaxy we are seeing, the Milky Way around in the image in the center. So they have a really good and interesting approach to talk about the time. Just like the Mayan time I mentioned here, in Taurus we have, this is one of many different perspectives we study about time. We have perspectives that I mentioned here, from Zimbardo, that is an American psychologist, to José Argüelles, this is a Mexican artist, to Ailton Krenak, this is an indigenous Brazilian philosopher, or from Afrofuturists to German sociologists to South Korean philosophers, because I really believe that we don't have a universal perspective of time. We have, just like we mentioned here, these many different cultural perspectives, and we can learn with all of them. This is what we study inside of our time lab. If you want to be part of one of these experiments or to learn more, you can enter in taurustimelab.org, because we have like articles and free material of other sessions like that, but also these experiments that I mentioned, that you become part of our guild of time travelers, you can have part of these experiments to have access to these materials. We have materials, for example, everything that I mentioned here today, examples and articles and authors and videos. This article here brings a brief version of everything and is available there in taurustimelab.org. So I invite you also to become a member of our guild. It's going to be amazing to share with more people around the world this knowledge, and to invite more people that you think that would be nice to have someone, a friend, that would like to know more, not only about the Tolkien Quest, but about all the different perspectives we talked here today. And now I'm going to come back here. And I hope that this different perspective was interesting to you. And I'm really curious to know if you knew already anything about this Mayan perspective of time being different than the one we follow. And what did you think about what we talked here to now? I'm curious. Do you want to share your thoughts or your feelings, Alex?
Sure. So the Mayan calendar It's not really, like, I don't know much about it at all, so that's a lot of that is new, other than the doomsday predictions. But it resonated an awful lot with me because I've journaled pretty much daily for the past 6 years, so I have this like record of my thoughts, and I was looking back on it about like a time that I knew that I was in Iceland, one of the most amazing trips of my life, and I was looking at my journal. I'd literally written nothing about what I did. I have no idea what I did, but it was just kind of what was going on in my mind at the time. So it's like a record of like that thought process, because I also believe that in what you were saying about that self-reflection and like being able to catch your thoughts and being able to identify them, that's how you change your future. Because as much as I've said the anxiety and like nature being cyclical, I also like use a 5-year plan kind of goal setting kind of method to kind of bridge that gap between like where I am now and where I want to be and what I'm going to do to move forwards. And it's kind of cool to have that record in the journals to see that progress, because we so often through time have no real kind of insight into what we've achieved or what we've done because we're so busy moving forwards.
Yeah.
So I definitely loved the idea of the cycles, and I'm going to go back and kind of look at the Mayan calendar a bit more. So like super interesting, like totally loved it.
Nice. Just like you mentioned your 5-year planner, imagine like I started, because of this project, I started with this group, a 13-year planner. And this project started in 2019, like the cycle that we all know the 2019 marked the beginning of this change, and it's a cycle of 13 years that goes until 2032, which means that just like we know, we have a lot to change until the end of this decade. And for me, this to use that as a self-investigation tool, just like you mentioned your planner as well, is really interesting, because in fact we need to have more ways of thinking about our experience in order to change all these different things that we know that until today, the way we were thinking reality were not enough to that. So I'm gonna love to share more with you about this perspective of the Tzolk'in too. Who else would like to come here to our video or to open your mic and say more about your thoughts and feelings of our session? I'm reading also here the comments in the chat with I think it was Peter that mentioned the Big Bang and Big Crunch happening in cycles. And actually, since we only pay attention in really small cycles of in our life, sometimes we not even pay attention that it is a cycle there, because we are looking like to just the small scale. And it's really interesting to think about this long-term view and how this is important also to the challenges we are facing today, right? How in order to be good ancestors, we not only want to follow and to get the knowledge from our ancestors, but we need ourselves to be good ancestors to the next generations. How we are doing that, how we are planning what we are gonna keep here as a learning to be kept for the next generations. And this is a really interesting challenge to think together how we can solve that. Thank you for the message. If you have not only thoughts and feelings about the presentation, but if you came up with any questions about any of the concepts or tools or references I mentioned here, I'm also available to answer your questions and to talk more about your relationship with time if you want to talk more or to know more about these initiatives. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to read here Peter comment. It always struck me as odd that most science fiction authors embrace death as desirable when an open-ended lifespan would seem so much more desirable and shift our perspective to be better stewards of the future. Actually, most of our idea of this line of time is connected with our fear of death. When we start to connect with these cultures that have this cycle as an approach for time, they also can understand and can tell us that, yes, maybe we're gonna face a challenge today and change something around. For example, maybe in this transitional era of everything that is happening around the world, you are not gonna be able to enjoy the shadows of the tree you are planting today. But actually, based in these other perspectives, maybe you can be one of these new babies that in some moment are gonna be there, made out of the cosmic dust that was generated by your present self. You can be part of one of these babies that are gonna be there enjoying the shadow of this tree that you are planting today. And when we start to think about this cycle and overcome this fear of death, comes also a really good and meaningful sense of realization of our place here in the space and time. I hope these thoughts and feelings were what you needed today. I honor your presence in this session. It was really good to have all of you here. As I said, I'm open to talk and to dialogue in other moments together. Thank you very much for your time as well. And thank you, Galdino, here representing Envisioning, that opened this platform to all these different sessions.
Yeah, I would like to thank you in the name of Envisioning again. Like we have been running some sessions like this for a while. Like the people, the companies are friends, and the people behind the companies are friends. So like I love that we have this kind of relationship. And yeah, thank you so much. It's always it's not the first one, and it's probably not the last one I will see, and I always hear new stuff actually. But I just love it. Like I shared it right now. Like I feel like time, or free time, to be honest, like free time, like just in blank, it might be the luxury item of the future, because everybody's trying to grab your attention all the time. We are doing this as well. Like right now, we are trying to grab attention from the people around the world on the internet, from their work or for anything. And like so that on that note, I would again like thank you. I would love to, like, we need to catch up. So if you want to grab like a Zoom coffee, let me know. And thank you all. Like we could connect. I see people putting their, like Gust just put like his social networks. Anyone who wants to connect with anyone, I would say, can just drop a line in there. And yeah, see you guys around the Futures Day. We're gonna have a session starting soon in about
15 minutes, yes.
14 minutes. Yeah, 14 minutes. And like if you are here, you have already been to our Eventbrite page, so you get the link there for culture, tech culture, or tech plus culture with Michelle and Luma. See you guys around. I will be later on today representing Envisioning as well, and the Zoom session that is going around the globe with the World Futures Day, and later on with the future crimes. So see you guys around. Ciao.
Thank you again. Bye, Ashley, Alex, Peter, Benjamin.
Bye. Thanks a lot.
Bye. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Frederick, Mariana, Vicky. Thank you all. Bye.